Hey everyone, it's Joe Waxman, and I'm back with another video. Today, I want to talk about the subject of happiness. I've been seeing, I don't know, a number of times online about people asking about happiness. You know, Usually it has something to do with like, oh, I just want to be happy. How can we be happy? Why, various questions about being happy. And you see, it's quite a common cliche, like I just want to be happy. People like um, there's sort of the comparison to like, oh, do you want to be rich and famous when you grow up? No, I just want to be happy. Um, and there's a feel good feeling about it, like, why can't I just be happy? I just want to be happy. That's all. Very modest. I just want to be happy all my life. Just sort of like that. And there's a problem with that, in that thinking that number one, that we can be happy, or number two, that anyone is happy all the time, that it's just okay to be happy, or that really the understanding, the thinking that happiness is ultimately preferable to unhappiness. I mean, sure, on the surface, I mean, if we had to choose between happiness and unhappiness in a momentary way, we could choose happiness. Right, but nobody's happy all the time, and unhappiness serves a purpose. And if we look at it more clearly, we can understand the mechanism behind happiness. I mean, if you ask me if I'm happy right now, like not particularly happy or unhappy. I'm fine. I'm content. I'm good. But there are times where I am unhappy, particularly I could say, times where I'm angry or sad. And um, I want to talk about sadness for a moment, because I've learned a tremendous amount through sadness, and I want to talk about it here. This is just my experience. I'm not putting forward some grand philosophy about happiness and trying to prove everyone wrong who says they want to be happy. I'm just talking about my own experience. And everyone can do that. Nobody has to be like a philosopher or teacher or some great anything in order to talk about their own experience. So, it's not like I'm sitting here pretending to be some kind of teacher or anything. I'm just sharing my experience and what has worked for me. um I mean, I've been through a lot of sadness, and I'm sure that's not uncommon. I mean, that's common. It's common to be sad. It's common to have a lot of things to be sad about, from people, going through hardships, abuse, trauma, people dying, whatnot. Um, you know, I've been through all that. Um, and sadness has been a great teacher for me, especially when I got to the point where I started to really investigate my own sadness in an attempt to heal it. And I started to look at it for what it was. And I remember there was one particular moment where it really, really dawned on me. I was feeling quite down, quite depressed, quite sad. And instead of pushing it away, believing that sadness is bad and happiness is good, and why can't I just be happy and other people are happy, which is an illusion, by the way. Nobody's happy all the time. Not nobody. I mean, not rich people. Not even, you talk about the happiest person. I think they found, like, they did tests. They do like scientific tests, and they found the happiest person, not the happiest person in the world, but the happiest person that they tested was a Buddhist monk. He was actually a European, a white guy, Buddhist monk, not like a Asian. But that's irrelevant. Point was, they found some guy, and of course they're not going to test everyone in the world, but they found some guy, and he was measured high on their whatever they were testing, however they were testing it. But the thing is that the irony there is that to be a Buddhist monk, you don't chase happiness. That's not what you're doing. You're meditating. And in meditation, you're facing your own unhappiness. You're facing your own darkness. So, I mean, that's the irony there, that the happiest person that they found was somebody who was not concerned with being happy. You do not put happiness at the forefront if you are a Buddhist monk. That's the last thing you do. You do not chase happiness as a Buddhist monk. You sit there in silence and face your misery. I mean, you're chasing misery, if anything. I mean, you're not chasing misery, but I mean, if you're going to be, the orientation is towards facing yourself. And that's the exact thing that people who say they want to be happy are trying to run away from. They're trying to run away from their own internal experience. So back to what I was saying, that was a tangent. But I started to face my own unhappiness because I knew that that was the only way forward. And so I started to investigate what it meant to be unhappy. And I started to look at it really closely. And I stayed with it in a meditative state. And I don't want you to get some sort of picture about what meditation is. I was just sitting, being sad, looking at my own sadness, and not telling myself this is bad, but just investigating, like because I'm curious. I'm a curious kind of person, and this is almost like, you could say, like a scientific experiment, if you will. Become a little bit scientific and curious about your own experience, and start to say, wait a minute, let's stop believing the nonsense for a moment. Just be sad, feel it, experience it, and try and figure out what it is. What's, like, what's going on. At least that's what I did. That was my mindset. Like, what is the sadness? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Why am I running away from it? Why do I hate it so much? What's the problem? What's the problem here with being sad? Why do I think happiness is something that I want and unhappiness is something I don't want? Like, really, like, let's do away with all the BS nonsense that everyone says, oh, I just want to be happy, like, why can't I just, it's simple. I'm a simple, honest, humble man. I just want to be happy forever and never experience unhappiness. I mean, I'm teasing. I mean, that's the most, let's be honest, that's an arrogant thing. If you think you're simple and humble because you just want to be happy all the time, no, that's arrogant. You don't recognize the arrogance in there, but it's extremely arrogant, because it's just not possible. It's like, I just want to be rich and famous forever. No, well, it's the same thing as saying, like, I just want to be happy. I'm a simple man. I just want to be happy all the time. No, that's not that's not simple. That's not humble. So anyway, looking at the cause for wanting to be happy is that you think that the opposite of happiness, or the absence of happiness, which is unhappiness, sadness at its root, and there might be other things. There might be trauma, there might be anxiety, there might be anger, there might be rage, there might be hatred. These are all forms of the negative emotions, which sadness is also a part of. Sadness is sort of like the most melted form of negative emotions, like the water here in these waves. That's the equivalent of sadness, if you will. And that's why sadness is the easiest form of negative emotions or unhappiness to take. And if you're sad, that's probably, you can be grateful, because versus any other negative emotion, anger, hatred, anxiety, outright fear, and they're all variations of fear, by the way. These are all fear-based, even sadness, hatred, rage, jealousy, any of the really concrete ones that produce mental illness, like the deep traumas and everything like that. You should be great if you're sad. Should be grateful that it's not any of those other ones, because those are much more difficult. They're like icicles. They're like glaciers. They're like, deeply hard formations of the negative emotions, whereas sadness is just like water, and it's very easy to deal with if you don't run away from it. That's why if you're sad, really be thankful and be grateful and lean into it. And just all you have to do when you're sad is just cry it out. Just be alone or be with somebody that you trust and feel safe with, and just cry it out. I mean, that's the easiest way to deal with a negative emotion. And just like water can be frozen, these negative sadness can revert. If you ignore your sadness, then yeah, it can solidify into something much harder to deal with, like anger, like hatred, like jealousy, like deeper psychosis, mental illness, anxiety, disassociation, numbness, right? There's all these different transmutations where it can go much deeper. And so I understand the reason why people want to be happy over being unhappy, because when you're happy, you get a break from all the negative emotions, all the variations of fear. They're all fear-based. It's all fear. We can just put it simply: fear, which is subconscious consciousness, and then full consciousness, which is not necessarily happy, but it goes along with happiness. Full consciousness is the part of ourself that can be happy, but when it's not happy, it's just content, it's peace. Full consciousness, healed consciousness is peace. So the way to do it is to, first of all, stop thinking that, happiness is some what's the word, goal, or the word is slipping my mind right now, some sort of ideal state of being where you can be happy all the time. Nobody's happy all the time. That's a myth. There's not a single person on the planet who is happy all the time. At best, if you're completely enlightened, you can be content. But even the completely enlightened, saints and sages will tell you that it's not happy all the time. It's not happiness all the time. It's a kind of bliss, but I mean, that's irrelevant. It's not happy all the time. It's peace, and all the negative emotions are healed, and it's full consciousness, but it's not happiness. That's not a thing. There's nobody who's happy all the time. We're happy sometimes and unhappy other times. Or maybe if we're completely healed, we're content and we're peaceful, but it's not happy all the time. I mean, that's just a myth. So we need to get rid of that thinking. There's never been a case, you look at the rich and famous, they're not happy all the time. I mean, they're some of the most miserable people on the planet because they are unhappy, and they're rich and famous, and then they just seek more power, more wealth, more control, or they become really depressed. They often, wind up dead from, could be suicide or drugs, alcohol, or, maybe they were, murdered for trying to expose the other rich and famous who are doing horrible things, stuff like that. But I mean, they're not happy all the time. What's his name? Jim Carrey said he wished everyone could be rich and famous and get everything they always desired, so that they could see that that's not the answer, and that's not going to make them happy. It's not, because happiness is an inside thing, and it doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from fame or success or anything like that. It's about we're content, we're peaceful in our heart, not happy. We're peaceful in our heart when we heal. When we heal our wounds, when we heal our fears, when we make conscious all the subconscious stuff that's festering in ourselves. And I'll tell you, the way to perpetuate it is by thinking you should be happy all the time, or you deserve happiness, and you just, that there's some place magical, it's all fantasy. Like, there's some fantasy place where you can just be happy all the time, which is nonsense. I mean, that's just complete delusion, fantasy. I mean, you're on your way to the mental hospital if you're chasing that goal, because you're never going to get there. Nobody ever has, and nobody ever will. So, I mean, that's delusional thinking. But the way to achieve peace and contentment and wisdom and truth and the natural state is by healing the all the fear-based negative emotions inside yourself. So the first thing is to recognize that if you're sad and you can cry, that's the best way that's the easiest way to facilitate the healing. Like, go somewhere and cry, right? Cry it out. Like, this whole notion that, like, oh, crying is for weakness, crying is for, weak people, crybabies and all that. That's for people who want to be miserable. I mean, believe that, you'll be miserable forever, and you'll develop some serious mental illness and addictions. right? It's got nothing to do with strength or weak. In fact, it's strong. It's the strong people know that, it's healthy to cry because it's just letting stuff out. Like imagine believing that about like your it's weak to have a bowel movement, to go poop, right? Or to go pee, right? So you just hold it in forever. It's a week to fart. So you just hold it in. You're causing yourself illness. I'm not kidding. It's the same exact thing. If you think that having emotions, human emotions is means that you're weak, and expressing those emotions means you're weak, you're insane. That's an insane person. That's like how you become insane, thinking that crying makes you weak. Like, welcome to hell. Welcome to hell. That's a person who's going to hell because they're making their life hell, right? The way towards peace is to heal yourself. And that means when some of that ice cube melts into sadness, when that fear, that hatred, that rage, that anxiety can melt into sadness and you feel sad, take that opportunity to process those negative emotions and to make them more conscious. By crying, you're making the subconscious conscious because you're expressing it. You're allowing it to come through your consciousness. You're allowing yourself to feel that sadness. And the other way is that to not suppress your anger, to not suppress your fears, your anxieties, your whatever it is, just direct it. You need to do it consciously. You don't take your anger out on other people, hopefully, ideally, because then you're just creating more negative karma for you. It's just going to come right back at you, right? But you deal with it. You don't suppress it. You deal with it in a responsible way. You just, like go for a walk and you're just rage for a little while, rage at the sky or whatever, the air, or play some loud music and yell or whatever you need to do to get that stuff out, right? Or however it's coming out. There's many ways to deal with it, and this isn't I'm not really trying to go into details about all the ways to deal with the negative emotions. I mean, the simplest way is that when you feel that water, which sadness is, that you just let it out. And going back to what I was talking about earlier, the realization I had was that sadness really isn't sad. And I mean, that is an incredibly powerful realization. I mean, that was an awakening for me. And I'm sharing it with you because maybe you can come to the same conclusion, that sadness isn't any more sad than this waves, this ocean background is sad. Like if you go swimming in that ocean, do you feel sad? You're gonna be like, oh my God, there's so much water around me. Oh, I'm miserable. Why would you do that? Or if it starts raining out and you're like, the rain is wet and it's making me cold and wet and I'm so miserable. Like, you don't have to. It's just wet. It's just water. Stop telling yourself that sadness is something to run away from and be miserable. Just like cut out the ideas. Be a rebel. Cut out the belief system that says you need to be miserable if you're miserable, right? I know that sounds like an oxymoron. Believe me, it's not. Like you can sit there crying like with tears in your face, like just pouring out, and you're just like wet on the inside and out. You're just like bawling, and you ask yourself, is this bad? Is this wrong? Is this something that is unenjoyable? Really challenge yourself there. I'm telling you, you can come. I'm not saying you will. I'm saying you can come to the same realization that I had that says, it's okay to be sad. I mean, it's actually enjoyable, and it's actually it's quite beautiful if you can perceive it without any of the negative stories that you're telling yourself. Yes, you might miss a person if they're gone from your life, or you miss this or that, or but you get into the actual feeling and out of your head. Like if you get out of your head and into the feeling, it's really not bad. It's really not bad. I mean, it's just an experience, and it's like, so what? Stop feeling sorry for yourself and just get into the actual visceral experience of misery. And it's, I mean, call me sadistic, but it's enjoyable. I mean, it really is. And maybe that has something to do with Scorpio placements. I mean, but I think anyone can find that. I think anyone can find that within themselves. That the experience of sadness is enjoyable. And why shouldn't it be? It shouldn't be any more unenjoyable than swimming in the ocean or dancing in the rain. Just next time you feel like crying, just imagine that you're dancing in the rain. And why should that be miserable? Why should it be miserable to dance in the rain, in the puddle, or in in the ocean or a lake? Go swimming in the lake in the rain, or in the ocean in the rain, and just dance in it and just have a good time. And you'll have the same experience as you would being miserable with all the tears coming down your face. Look, I actually watch sad movies so I can cry. I mean, that's, at the risk of sounding like, weak or effeminate, I don't really care what people think of me. I do that. I'm secure in my masculinity, and I like to cry. I like to explore that side of things because it's enjoyable. I mean, that's kind of insane if you say that to the modern world. People are like, "What? You enjoy being miserable? Ooh, what's wrong with you? You're psychotic." Actually, no. I mean, it's a really wonderful experience. I can't say that I enjoy being mad, if I'm really angry, although I don't suppress it anymore like I used to. When I was young, I used to suppress my anger, and that's a recipe for hell, right? If you want to go to hell, suppress your anger. You'll be in hell all the time. You'll just be angry all the time, which I was until I learned how to deal with it. So it's not like I enjoy all the negative experiences. There are a lot of much more dense negative experiences that are harder to come to terms with, but at least intellectually, I know that they don't have to be, you don't have to rail against these negative emotions, like even anger or hatred or rage. Intellectually, even though they're hard to accept, you don't have to say that they're fundamentally bad and that we shouldn't have those experiences. You can say, well, that, even though I don't know how to enjoy it, it is part of life, and I have to, let it out, because keeping it in just makes my everyday experience that much more miserable, that much more hellish. I mean, if you want a recipe for unhappiness, we can sure do that. That is a guarantee. Easy recipe for unhappiness is to believe that you can be happy all the time and that all negative experiences are to be avoided. That's a recipe for just unhappiness all the time. I mean, sure, there are people who are really much more miserable than they are happy. But those are people who chase happiness, right? That's the irony, because they're chasing happiness and they're pushing away the unhappiness. They're pushing away the beautiful waves, the water, the rain. When your heart starts raining and your eyes start raining too, they push that away and they say, no, that's for weakness. That's for weak people. That's for, let's say, like, they'll probably say that's for pussies, right? Because they want to appear tough, right? But those are the most miserable people you will find, and they will be addicted to drugs, sex, and alcohol, and food, and money and power. They'll be, they're low lives. I mean, that's the how to be a low life recipe. How to be a low life: chase happiness, think you can be happy all the time, think you deserve to be happy all the time, and push away all negative emotions. Right? The recipe for hell, recipe for a low life, recipe for a loser. But if taking, like I said, there's no happiness all the time, but taking happiness out of the equation, if you just want to be content, peaceful, that's totally possible. And for that, just come to an understanding that Sadness is a part of life. And even the most enlightened people on the planet, the most healed people on the planet, will have times where they're unhappy. In fact, a lot of times. And there'll be times where they're sad even and cry and be miserable. And maybe they'll be angry at sometimes. But they're not going to repress those emotions. They're not going to run away and tell themselves that those are things that they shouldn't experience, or that they're pussies for crying, or that they're weak. They're just going to it's just going to happen. They're going to cry and they're not going to fight it off. They're not going to feel miserable about it. They're not going to tell themselves that crying or feeling sad or feeling anger is something to be avoided. It's just another experience. And it's just the weather. It's the weather, it's the water, and it's actually, I'm telling you, it can be enjoyable. It's really not that hard to fathom. I mean, it's like, it's an enlightening revelation when you can get to that point, and you can absolutely get to that point. It's not that hard to enjoy sadness. I do on a daily, I sometimes I'll watch a sad movie and I'll just have no sadness in my heart. I'll just be like, oh, that's sad, but I'm fine. I'm not gonna cry because this is not moving me enough, and I'm not unhappy enough. I'm not miserable enough, and I can't get into that space. But I enjoy it when I can. So yeah, I mean, all this question about happiness is just, it's laughable. It's laughable. And that's a happy state. But, it's funny when people are all like asking about how to be happy. How come we can't be happy? Blah, 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 all that and that. It's just a confusion. They think that, they can be happy all the time. And it's impossible. It's not reality. It's delusion. Nobody's happy all the time. The best we can do is be healthy and to be conscious and to be, content in our heart. And that means being healed. And that means not repressing any of our emotions, not telling ourselves that our emotions are bad and that we shouldn't have these negative emotions and we should run away from these negative emotions. I mean, you see that I used to watch this show, Intervention, because I really like understanding the psychology of these people who are so miserable and so addicted to drugs and alcohol, right? That they're willing to risk death. And every single one of them was avoiding basically just crying. That's all. I mean, yeah, it goes deeper than that, but you could see that whenever they started to touch on a painful event in their life and they would cry, they would run away and go to their drugs. So even the most simple outpouring of emotion, which is just the water, the sadness, the one that's closest to the heart, the easiest and most enjoyable, least difficult to deal with, they would run away from that. So I'm saying, cry and try and enjoy it, because it's enjoyable and it's totally possible. And it's just water. It's just water. And if you look at it, you'll see it's blue, it's wet, it's cold, and it's watery. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with water? I mean, you tell me. I mean, it's kind of baffling that I ever thought it was, yeah, there's a certain element of pain, but I don't know, grow up. You think you can go through life without any pain? Pain's enjoyable too. Pain is part of life. Pain, it makes you feel alive, right? So don't run away from the feelings, from the water, from the pain, from the sadness, from the loss. We're all going to die. We're all dying every single day anyway, and there's no guarantee that we're going to live to an old age. So sometimes, I mean, just accept it now that people are going to die before they're old. People in your life, people that you know, people that you love, they're going to die. Just accept it, get it over with, because it's going to happen. Don't be so surprised when somebody dies before they're 90, or 95. I mean, some people are surprised when, old people die. Even then, it's just like, well, I mean, what did you expect? I mean, you should have come to terms with that a long time ago. That was, uh, I mean, that was an inevitable conclusion from day one. We're all going to die. We're all going to lose people that we love. Get used to that. That's normal. That is life. And so is pain. And pain is beautiful. Pain is beautiful too, because pain reminds us that we're alive. And so does crying. And so do all negative emotions. And the crazy ones are the ones who think that we are entitled to be happy all the time, or that we can be happy. And that's insanity. That's insane. So just stop with the insanity already. You're just creating hell for yourself. So yeah, that's the recipe for hell. Chasing happiness is the recipe for hell. Yeah, I mean, just put it down. Let's just keep it simple. Chasing happiness is a recipe for hell. It's a recipe for misery. It's a recipe for mental illness. It's a recipe for being a loser, being a drug addicted, self-hating loser. Okay. So that's my spiel on happiness and the whole thing with like, why can't I just be happy? I just want to be happy. Simple old me. I'm so humble. I don't want riches and fame. I just want happiness. So shut up. Okay. That's stupid. All right. There. That's that for what it's worth. Let's be a little more intelligent. Let's stop chasing happiness and just learn to heal and become more fully conscious. Let's stop putting our ideas onto reality, right? And let's start observing and asking what is reality, instead of thinking we know what reality should be, and it just won't give us our imagination. Like, why won't reality conform to our imagination? Because you're insane. That's why. Stop being insane. Okay, that's enough. I'll see you guys later. Bye.